My name is Miss Dillingworth. This is a U.S. history class. All of our juniors take U.S. History 1, which is from like the pre-Columbus era all the way up to the Civil War and Reconstruction period. And then senior year, the girls will study, the rest of U.S. history up until about 2012 or so. So we do a lot of really, interesting things in the class. We do some reading, we do some primary sourcing, we do a lot of projects. But I've been teaching at Mother Seton for this is my 12th year, and I really love it. I think it's a great place to be. I teach mostly at the honors level, and I also teach AP U.S. history, which about a third of our students usually take. All right, girls, happy Thursday. It's good to see many of you here. We have some guests who might be watching this. Everybody wave hello to the guests who might be watching this. I'm recording this for Mrs. Patterson. All right, so getting back to chapter 11, which is on the Civil War. You girls read this section of the textbook on different experiences of Black soldiers, Southern civilians, Northern businessmen, army camps, Clara Barton, Dorothea Dix, and prisoners at Andersonville. So, and I asked you girls the past couple days, I put you in groups, and I asked you to take on the roles of each one of these people. So what I'm going to do is we are going to pretend that we are on The View or The Talk, or what's that one with Jada Pinkett Smith? Red Table Talk, like whatever, some type of like a talk show type environment, okay? And I'm going to ask you guys some questions, and I want you to see if you can answer it, okay? And again, I want you to do this in character, as if you're the person who you were asked to portray, okay? So I'm going to start off with the Black soldiers, and I'm going to ask you just a few questions. You might not know all the answers, but I bet you'll know some of them. Hi, so, okay? But what I'd like you to do is, when I say Black soldiers, if all the Black soldiers could take their their mics off mute so that you can answer these questions. Sound like a plan? All right. And if you don't know the answer to a question, that is absolutely okay. I promise you that I know all the answers. Okay? We'll be all right. But I do want to hear from you as much as possible. Also, like, I miss hearing from your faces. Like, it's so nice to see you guys. Seriously. Okay? All right, so we'll start off with the Black soldiers in the Union Army, so meaning the North. Okay? I asked you guys to make a list of 5 facts you want the public to know about your service and your treatment in the Army. Start off, did you guys notice, Black soldiers who served in the Army, how many of you served in the war, or what percentage of the Army was made up of Black people during the Civil War?
There was 18,000 soldiers, Black soldiers in the Union Army.
Excellent. Very good. How were the Black soldiers treated in the Union Army?
They were treated unfairly because of their paid salary. They actually got money off from their $10 paid salary because of wearing the uniform. And for white soldiers, they didn't get money off of any clothing that they wore. So it was pretty unfair to the Black soldiers.
Absolutely. The white soldiers even got paid more for this, which was pretty, messed up. They got paid $13, as Marissa said, plus like a stipend for clothing. The Blacks got paid less and didn't get a stipend at all. Jacked up. What was the death rate like for Black soldiers?
The death rate was a lot more than the white soldiers.
Why?
Probably because they probably put the Black soldiers like up first, knowing that they put the Black soldiers in the front line, knowing that they would take the bullets first.
Also, it's like because of where they were put. They were put, what's it called? The garrisons? Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
So it's like, so the mortality rate was higher for them than white soldiers because of, it was like easier for them to catch deadlier diseases because of where they were.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, thing that we're seeing in a lot of the different sections that we read about. Like, the disease in these camps was just like a mess, and this killed a lot of people. I also like what you said about how they were given the most dangerous jobs. They were kind of put in first, treated very unfairly. And this really reinforces a thing that we've talked about a lot with the Civil War, right? This idea that like it's not like everyone in the North was like, oh, this good person who believes in equality and things like that, right? There was still a lot of racism even among the North. Okay, excellent. So most of the South really, really suffers. And one of the things they suffer from is inflation. So we know inflation is when, the value of something remains the same, but the cost goes all the way up. Like we may have seen this with hand sanitizer, right, in the beginning of the coronavirus crisis. Did anybody see this in the news or whatever, where like people were saying, oh, this bottle of hand sanitizer is now, $15. That was, $5 in the beginning. That is what happened in the South because they didn't have a lot of things coming in. Okay, so we see inflation. We're also going to notice, and this is really interesting, that both sides, they start printing their own money. Okay, in the North, they're going to print greenbacks, which is like a type of currency, and they're going to say everyone has to accept this, and they're relatively successful. But in the South, when they print their own money, it is like a total fail because it's not backed. We know what would happen to our money today, like your dollars, if the government just went away.
They'd be valueless. They wouldn't have any meaning anymore. It's just pieces of paper.
Absolutely. They're just pieces of paper, right? And so to the South, who they're printing this money and they're distributing it to their people, this money is almost totally useless or worthless. And so they're going, okay, all of a sudden things that cost $5 cost like $50. Like there's that little vignette in the beginning with Mary Chestnut in the very beginning of this chapter, where she talks about how she sold a dress for like $600 or something. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. But then she talks about how like that's actually that'll buy her eggs and milk or something for the week. So one of the things that South really has to deal with is a shortage of goods. This will be important for a long time afterwards during that Reconstruction period. That's what the South is trying to recover. Okay. Awesome. Southerners, great job. Anything else you guys want to add that I didn't go over?
No, it's okay. Thank you.
No, thank you guys. You guys are rocking out. So next we're going to go to reporters who are investigating the greedy actions of Northern businessmen. I asked you to prepare a list of methods businessmen are using and making lots of money off of that take advantage of war, especially actions that have a negative impact on soldiers. How did the war affect business in the North? So, do you want to start off maybe?
It was the people that went to war, since there was no men, like they volunteered to serve the country. There was no like working in the factory, so they had to like recruit women, children, African Americans, immigrants, because there wasn't any money being made. So they were able to pay them less, and they would never know.
While in the South, the economy really suffers, right? They really have a lot of trouble. In the North, the economy like booms. Like this is going to be a big deal. People make a lot of money. I like how you talked about how women were hired to replace men, but also immigrants, young kids, like pretty messed up. Would you guys say, Northern businessmen, that the Army was a good customer for Northern businesses?
Yes.
Yes. So the Army needs all these things, and it would be like, this is how they're going to make them.
The Army needed uniform.
This is the big difference, and I want to make sure you guys know this. The Army needs uniforms. The Army needs supplies. The Army needs tents. All these things. And Northern industry is going to make a lot of money producing these. Anything that I missed in terms of Northern industries?
I wrote down that Congress enacted the law, like the first income tax
Okay, what's an income tax?
on like companies that are making too much money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Good. Excellent.
Where the government takes a specific percentage of the individual's income.
Okay. Excellent. And this was originally, it was just on people who made a lot of money or, kind of these captains of industry. It wasn't to everybody the way the income tax is today. But yeah, that was the original intention of it. Great job, guys. Good additions. All right, I'm going to move on to the reporters who are investigating health conditions in the army camps. What kind of guidelines were given to soldiers in regards to cleanliness and health?
They were required to wash their hands and like their face and stuff like that at least once a week.
Once a week? Oh my goodness. Guys, that's not going to get them very far, right? Did they always follow these guidelines, Faith?
No.
No. So what kind of diseases would we see in camps and why?
So you would usually see like dysentery and diarrhea.
Yeah, dysentery is basically just like diarrhea nonstop, which means besides like obviously being gross, also means your body loses a lot of supplies. So people will literally die from dysentery. Okay, so we're going to see that happening. What other problems would we see in a camp, whether it was a northern camp or a southern camp?
When the surgeons would like amputate their limbs, they wouldn't clean the tools, so that would cause like really bad infections.
Yes. So just
And
like
then
in the Revolutionary War, have we heard about how this killed more people, killed more people than actual bullets in battles? This is still going to be a common thing. I'm sorry I interrupted, Weedy. Go ahead, babe.
And then I was saying that like some doctors don't get enough sleep, so they like sleep deprived and don't make correct medical like diagnosis, and that could cause like harm to the soldiers too.
Absolutely. Anything else you guys noticed about the surgeries that really like stood out to you?
Like if it's like a tiny little bullet, they'll still amputate it because they don't really have any. They don't have like the technologies we have today back then. And plus, since they're like in a really rush, like they have to think quick on their feet.
Absolutely. And they had chloroform, they had opioids that like, you know how normally if you go under surgery you get like anesthesia or something like that. Those things existed, but they didn't have enough of them. And especially if they were far from like a train or like deep in the south or something like that, they wouldn't have them at all. So they might be able to give soldiers like a little bit of alcohol to numb the pain before they, did these surgeries that Phoebe and her group talked about, or in some cases they might not have had anything at all, and they would just have to do it. Many, many people in their letters and their diaries talk about hearing the screams of people as, somebody is like cutting them open with a knife to take out a bullet, like Phoebe said. So yeah, definitely a lot of problems. The wounds are treated really, really horribly. What about food? Did you notice? Like, what would soldiers eat during this time?
They would kind of eat like bacon if they had it. Like just very not like good meals. It would just be like scrubs or scraps.
Absolutely. We would see like no fresh vegetables, no fresh fruit. A lot of sourdough, a lot of hardtack. And they would joke about how these biscuits were so hard they could like literally stop a bullet. So you know what I mean? Just really, unhealthy. And those things are going to lead to like what Yuchechi mentioned earlier, a lot of the disease, dysentery, right? These things get worse by not having a healthy diet. So yes, that's absolutely a problem.
Also, like because for the Confederate soldiers, the Union took like charge of their like food areas, and like during that time the slaves were like rebelling, so they like lost like most of their food sources.
Absolutely. So that would be, a really big deal too. They're not going to be able to produce enough food. And also remember, a lot of the southern plantations, they produce cotton. Can you eat cotton? No, you're all geniuses. Don't eat your clothes, okay? Which means that the South really relied on the fact that they could trade cotton with, Europe, with the North to make money. That's what their economy normally revolved around. Well, they couldn't do that anymore. which means that they're, really, they're going to be starving and their soldiers are going to be starving. Okay. Good. Excellent job, ladies. Let's move on to Clara Barton and Dorothea Dix. I asked you girls to think about 5 facts that you'd want to share with women who hope to become nurses for the Union Army. What kind of qualifications were there to become a nurse in the Union Army?
They had to have high moral standards and not be too attractive and be willing to dress plainly. And they had to have determination and knowledge and physical and emotional strength.
Why couldn't pretty girls like us join what the heck, Clara? Why are you so jealous? Why are you so jelly, Clara Barton? Okay. Why did she only want plain women to serve in the Army?
For romance.
She was worried about romance. She was worried that they'd want to fall in love with the soldiers, and that would be distracting to people. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Why were there so many qualifications? What do you think?
Because you had to be willing to save a life, so you had to know what you were doing.
Okay, you had to know what you were doing, so you had to know something. You had to save lives.
They're basically facing the same things like the soldiers would face. Not only were they working at hospitals, they were also at the front lines, going back and forth for supplies and dealing with wounded soldiers.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was very dangerous. Dorothea Dix, who was 60 when she was made head of the Union nurses. I mean, think about that. To be 60 now is it's kind of older. But imagine what it was to be 60, 150 years ago, right? The fact that she was going to do this was pretty brave of Dorothea Dix. Okay? So she only wanted plain looking women. You have to be at least 30 because, you can't fall in love after 30 or, whatever. What are some other ways that women could help the war effort? I don't know if you guys have some ideas on this group.
They helped wounded soldiers and all that and fed patients. They also wrote letters to them, read and prayed with them.
Yeah.
They would manage all the medicine and supplies that was there and kind of keep track of all that stuff because the soldiers, they just fought. And they staffed hospital kitchens and laundries places.
Excellent. Great job. So they would do all these things. Do you think you would see a lot of men serving as nurses?
No.
No. Yeah. I mean, we definitely would see men as being our surgeons, and in some cases, they would be doctors or nurses. But the idea is that if you're a man, you're supposed to be doing what during this time?
Fighting.
Yeah.
Fighting.
Right. They wanted their men to be fighting, and so. One thing that's interesting is we do see women taking a little bit more of an active role, whether it's, working, as some of the other groups have mentioned, or, something like this. I'll point out, and this is kind of cool, our Sisters of Charity, which are our nuns, like Sister Jacqueline, Sister Marianne, Sister Theo, they're Sisters of Charity. Their mother house is in Maryland, and they were in some of the battles. And they went out and they actually helped the northern soldiers to heal them, and they worked as nurses. I mean, not Sister Jacqueline herself. They weren't around 150 years ago, but our own Sisters of Charity, which I think is kind of cool. It's a good connection. All right, and the last group that I asked you guys to do a little bit of research on is Prisoner at Andersonville. I asked you to make a list of 6 facts you'd like to present at the war crimes trial of Camp Commander Henry Weirs. So tell me, why were prisoners fed so poorly on both sides, but for the South in particular?
Yeah, they faced starvation and let me see. Yeah, they didn't have enough food, and they had inadequate water supply, inadequate food rations, and unsanitary conditions. For an example, they had to drink out of the same stream that served as their sewer. And some of the chief causes of death were scurvy, diarrhea, dysentery, and malnutrition. So they really didn't give them good health standards, and there's just not enough food, and it was overpacked too.
Yeah, this idea of overcrowding would be a big deal. They talk in particular about these prisons that are made to serve for a few hundred soldiers. Instead, they're putting thousands of people in these very small camps. Um, Also, in particular, when they talked about Andersonville, did you guys notice what they said about the shelters?
They're living like in the tents.
They had like little to none, so they basically slept outside on the ground or in the rain, depending on the weather, and they had no other choice.
Absolutely. And if you imagine this too, think about like what life was like in Georgia in the summer, right? Think about how hot that would be, and not to have any protection against the sun, right? It's even more dangerous. So prisoners are fed very poorly. They're very crowded. And I really like the examples that Julie gave in terms of like the illness that a lot of people had. Who was Henry Wers, and what happened to him? Can you guys talk about that at all?
So Henry Wirth was from Switzerland. He was a Swiss commander. He served at many prisons for the Confederate War, and then he was noticed as a good commander. So then he was moved to Andersonville, Georgia, where there he treated the prisoners poorly, ruthlessly. He didn't care about if they were basically alive, if they had anything to eat. So, yeah.
When we meet next week, guys, I'll show you a picture of one of the prisoners that gets rescued from Andersonville, and he literally looks so skeletal that like you're gonna think that he's dead, because it's very, very poor treatment. What happened to Henry Wers after the war?
He got hanged.
He got hanged by who?
Is it the Union?
By the North, yeah. He gets tried for war crimes because they say what he did was so horrible that he should be put to death as a result of this. So really, really, really harsh treatment there.
I guess the one thing I can add on was that some of the prisons were only made for like 10,000 people, but they filled it with 31,000 people.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and just to add on to like the Andersonville prison, it held 45,000 soldiers and 13,000 prisoners died.
Wow. Great job. So we talked about all these different, groups during the Civil War, African American soldiers, Southern civilians, reporters who were, investigating the businessmen, the health conditions in the camp, Andersonville, and then Clara, Barton, and Dorothea Dick. So great job with that guy. All right, girls, you're fabulous. So we finished everything that I wanted to get through today. So we're awesome. We are in fabulous shape.